guys. This is another episode of Love in a Cup with Chaya and
Adam Garcia.
here we have an amazing question from a beautiful single who entered their question in, and I'm going to read it to you as the question goes like this. What's my let it go plan? Do I call, ghost, text? What am I prepared to say if I don't want to date? Like I don't want to continue. Say the date is not going well. There are too many red flags and I need to exit. What about getting out of it? How do I leave a date that's not going well? So that is such a phenomenal question. So many times people can get set up on dates and set up with someone who they're like, oh, this is so not my spouse. Like, this is so not the person that I see myself with, that I want to be the husband of my children. I am not attracted to them at all. And I just want to get out of that date. So let's give a little bit of tips on how to handle that question.
So I guess the first question that I have for you is, do you stay on the date? If you're like an hour into the date, do you stay there? What do you do?
That's such a great question. So as we look into the camera and let's focus on you guys. Here's the thing. You need to remember first and foremost that you are committed to not being nice to that other person. You are committed first and foremost to being nice to yourself. So step one is having a commitment to yourself where you're not trying to be the nice guy for the other person, but you're trying to be a nice guy for yourself. You care more about prioritizing your feelings than their feelings. You care a lot more about prioritizing your mental health than their mental health. So first and foremost is prioritizing you over them. The second thing is you remember that you go into the date with a timeline. So you want to go into the date with a prepared timeline that if this is the first date, you are not going to exceed 1 hour, because most of the time when it's not your person, you know within 5 seconds. So why waste 5 hours when you knew in the first 5 seconds that this isn't someone you're attracted to? So you really want to just know you don't need to waste your time. And if you waste your time, you are going to feel like crap afterwards, where your energy was drained and you didn't even want to feel like this was going to work out. You didn't even want to feel like that because you knew it wasn't going to work out in the beginning. So one is you commit to yourself. You're not trying to be nice to them. You're trying to be nice to you. You're not worrying about what the shotgun thinks or what your mother thinks or what your father thinks or what he thinks. You're just being careful with your mind, body, and energy levels. The second thing is you give them a timeline before you go out. So when I was dating, and there was someone who was suggested to me, I knew that the likelihood being that 99% of every single guy, 99%, almost every single guy, let's say, that I was ever going to date with was not going to be my husband. Every single guy that I was going to date, with the exception of one, was not going to be my husband. Therefore, why would I think that it's going to be the right one this time when it's probably not? So the thing is, you tell them in advance. If they say, does Thursday at 7 p.m. work for you? You say, yes, I'd love to see you at 7 p.m. on Thursday. But you text them before you communicate on the date that at 8 p.m. or 8:30 on Thursday or Tuesday, whatever I just said, you have another appointment so that you will be there for 1 hour. Or that you have a rule with yourself that you only go out for an hour on the first date. And if they judge you, that already shows that they're really not flexible and rigid in their thinking. So if they judge you that you're only going to go out for 1 hour on the first date, anyways, that's a red flag to run, because you don't need someone who's going to put their negative thoughts on you in the first place and who's not accepting and forgiving. So you tell them in advance before the date starts that you are going to spend 1 hour. Then after 5 seconds, when you realize this person's not very attractive and probably not your spouse, you know in your heart and your mind that this date is going to end in 59 minutes and 55 seconds. So you commit to yourself. You tell them in advance that you're going to only do an hour, and you don't even have to worry, because if you really, really like them, you will go on a second date. And if he really wants you, he'll ask you on a second date, so you don't waste time. And the last thing is you always just have a game plan. If you see a bunch of red flags, just know that even if the hour isn't up, you just can still leave. You are obligated to protect you. You're not obligated to protect him. And just a really, really, really quick story is one time I went on a date with this guy, and he had a hat, and then he took off his hat and he was completely bald, and he just told me that he got out of jail. Couldn't even make this up, huh? I don't know, Adam knows that story. And and then I texted my friend on the date, please call me.
Yeah.
And so my friend called me on the date, and I said, oh my gosh, you're not okay? I'm gonna be there right now. And I said to him, I'm really, really sorry. There's an emergency with my friend. I'll be in touch with you through the matchmaker or whatever. I really need to leave now. I'm so sorry. And I will be in touch, and I hope you have a great night. And then, of course, you message the shotgun or him that you just, don't think it's going to work out. But then you leave. You are always obligated to protect you, not anyone else.
So it seems like, to summarize this, that going on the date, you're supposed to be prioritizing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay if you look a little silly, like texting, your friend to call.
I did it under the table.
You do it under the table, of course. But the thing is that you don't owe them anything, right? It's about protecting yourself. And even though if you might look a little silly, or, he might think, oh, she's actually just not wanting to go on another date with me or to continue this date, that's okay.
Because
it's not gonna be your husband anyway.
Yeah, and what is he gonna think? Oh, she wanted to leave the date. Okay, and then he'll get over it. Versus you losing your own energy, disrespecting yourself. You won't get over it that fast. He'll get over it. Oh, I guess she's flaky, or I guess she doesn't really want to get married. Whatever he thinks of you, who cares? Or whatever the shotgun or your mom or what other people think of you, who cares? So they think about it for a second, and then they move on to the next thought. But you are developing a relationship with yourself where you need that trust. You need to be able to know you're going to protect yourself so that you can even trust yourself to make the right decisions.
And there's a phrase that we've come to both love and kind of resonate with, which is the way that you do something is the way that you do everything.
Yeah, Isler says it a lot. The way you do anything is the way you do everything.
And so, for example, in this date, in this date, for example, if you are trying to be the nice person and neglecting yourself, and you tell yourself, I've given myself 1 hour, or, so I can be nice for this long. In that moment, you are you're pushing down the emotions that you have, and you're not prioritizing yourself. And then maybe that's just that one date, but that's going to become your dating life, your dating process. You're going to fall into this cycle of, just for this one date, I'm going to act this way. But I'm going to promise myself after the date, I'm not going to act this way. But if it happens once, it's going to happen again. And what you're saying is that through the dating process, well, you have to be intentional going on the date. For example, one thing that you are trying to do is to scout out, is this person somebody who will best serve me? And if you go into the date with an intention in mind, for example, your thoughts are going to be much more clear.
Yeah. And
you're not going to be thinking, oh, this person is, I don't really like him, but there's this one thing there, it's about yourself. And I think that in society, people think it's bad to be selfish. And I think that there's potentially a difference. Maybe you can elaborate on what is selfish and what is self-protecting.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and thanks for bringing that up. And one of the things that I want to mention is that that's right. If you're always focused on him and making somebody else happy, even if you think you're just doing it once, that is what you're going to be doing. And the other thing is the reason that it's your vision is because you're getting married for your best self. So it's not about trying to be liked. A lot of time women go on dates and they just want to be liked. They want the guy to think they're pretty. They want the guy to think they're great and maybe that they're marriageable. But they're thinking about being liked versus, do I like this person? So their headspace is like, oh my God, let me say the right thing. Let me do the right thing. Let me say please and thank you. Yeah, that's great. And let me be smart, intelligent, and I want to be wanted, right? I want to be loved. Even if I don't love him and want him back, I want him to think I'm cool and great. And you're kind of focused on what that other person thinks of you versus what you think of you and what you think of him. So take a step back and be what do I think about him? Am I attracted to him? Am I observing his behavior? Am I thinking that he's very gentle and soft-spoken and careful with his words? Or is he like a loudmouth and joking a bunch and sarcastic and totally dissociated from the reality that we're in, which is like serious and connective, right? You're not like going on a date where you're like going on a roller coaster and it's like screaming and fun. You're going on a date when you're marriage minded to see if you're going to have a good and high ROI, a good return on investment. So if you're going to spend 1 month with them or 1 year with them, is that investment of time, energy, and love going to be a high return? Something and someone that's going to commit to you and give you a lot of value and love in the future. So if you aren't coming at it with the sense of like, what do I think about this person? You can just get very easily deluded about just wanting to be liked. So then you flip that. And then to answer your question, what's the difference between selfish and self-protective? Mm-hmm. The difference is a selfish person is in such a state of fear. They're in a really, like, they're very afraid of being hurt and violated to the point where they have to be like, always thinking about themselves and getting their needs met and not knowing how to connect and get help from other people or being vulnerable or asking people for what they need. They're very selfish because they don't see the world as a safe space or friendships and relationships as safe. They see people as sort of like, maybe they'll turn on me, maybe they'll attack me, maybe they'll leave me. They're a little bit paranoid and definitely coming from a place of fear. So the selfishness is just a coping mechanism that they've developed over time to focus on themselves because they can't really get too close to other people because that's just too frightening. And then a self-protected person is much more humble and in a safe space where I have the capabilities to choose and decipher who's good for me. And when someone's not good for me, I know and am able to just manage my emotions, protect myself, and walk away. So it's very faith-based. I have faith in myself that if someone is not good for me, I know how to take care of myself and walk away. And I have faith that God will send me good people in my life, and every single person in my life is for my benefit, is a lesson that I need to learn, is someone I need to connect with, is someone that maybe knows somebody else for me. But I have a faith-based mindset where people in general are safe and that the things that come into my life are for my benefit. So self-protection is in a way where I know how to protect myself because I love myself, I'm committed to myself, I'm committed to my energy and not wasting my energy and coming home drained and exhausted. And then the other side, selfishness, is like a protection where I have to think about myself and my needs, and I don't really feel safe letting other people become too close and vulnerable to me because I'm too scared of being hurt and the what could happen aspect.
So first of all, thank you so much for explaining that. And I just, I was just thinking of a story of when we first met and when we first went on a date. And I think that one of the things from a guy's perspective that was very refreshing and very calming and comforting is the fact that you were not shy. You were not holding back your yourself. And I think that was very powerful.
And I think that's why Adam and I were able to have a short and non-complicated dating process, because I was my authentic self. And therefore, he either liked me or didn't like me. And a lot of people, whether they liked me or didn't like me, just I was acting myself. I wasn't trying to be loved or wanted or, good for other people. I wasn't trying to pretend I was someone I was not. I wasn't trying to be small or quiet or polite. I was loud and I cursed sometimes and I was a little crazy, right? I was very much myself, not in a way that I was trying to manipulate anyone. I was just really authentic. So when he actually came into my life, he understood, who I was in a much deeper and more accurate way, because I was acting in a much deeper and accurate way. So if you're living your most authentic self, that's how your partner can see if you're really their soulmate. He can't see if you're his soulmate if your soul's not shining. If your soul is darkened and clothed by depression or lack of worthiness or thinking you're not enough because of your age, you're too old or too young, too fat, too skinny, too religious, not religious enough, have kids, don't have kids. Like, if you give yourself like, I'm not good enough or worthy enough because I don't have money or a job or whatever, as a female, then he can't see your authentic soul and shine and aura and glow, because you're covering it with the darkness of your thoughts. You have to love yourself and be bright, so when your soulmate comes into your life, he can actually see your soul and be like, yes, that's my partner.
And I think it was on the date when you ordered soup. I think that there was like somebody there that you didn't want to, like, whatever, and I got to, and
I
you
remember that.
yeah, and Chaya said like, okay, I have to do this and like switch tables or switch sides or something like that. And first of all, for me, it gave me the, okay, this is her quirkiness. And at least I knew from day one what her quirkiness is, you know? And you, by coming into the date with self-protection, you were able to be your authentic self, and I was able as the man to see authentically who you were.
And then if you want me or not.
And if I want you or not. And I got to be caring and compassionate, and like, these are some really deep principles that we got to, through that experience of Chaya showing up with her authentic self. We were able to play out a certain relationship scenario on that first date. And that's like a deep core principle that even now, 7 years later, we carry into our marriage, where, the protecting, being vulnerable, being open, but also trusting in the other person. And if Chaya were to, let's say, not say anything and be uncomfortable the entire time because of whatever the situation, then I wouldn't have had the opportunity to see that during our first date.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes dating smooth, when you're just not trying to be wanted. I was really in a very good place where I was happy to walk away from anyone that I didn't think was my highest potential. So if he had 9 out of 10 things, but the 10th thing was that he smoked pot, I walked away, and I walked away fast, and I walked away without any hesitation, because I just loved myself enough that abandonment didn't scare me, or being alone didn't scare me. I was so okay being alone and happy with my life that I didn't want to ever ruin my happiness and my growth with someone who wouldn't facilitate and continue that, which you very much do. Very much do. So just to answer the question of like, if I'm not on a good date, how do I leave it? You got to just think, how much do I love myself, right? Like, you don't love him. You just met him. Even if he's hot and rich, you don't love him. You just want the potential of what he can give you. But there's a difference of the potential that he can give you and the reality that you can give yourself and need to give yourself right now, which is your own love and your own attention and your own commitment that you're not going to hurt yourself. And when you continue to go out on a date with someone who you don't think is good for you, you are actively hurting yourself and diminishing the voice inside of you that's trying to tell you to listen. Something is not right here. And you don't need to wait for your rationale to catch up. So many times we feel something intuitively, like this isn't working, or it's not for my best, or I just don't see this person as my highest potential. And then, you're like, oh, but he's a nice guy, and the matchmaker or my friend said he's a great guy, and and my matchmaker or my friend or my mother's best friend said, that he learns really beautifully, and that he's such a good chavrusa, and that he's an amazing guy. You would be lucky to have him. And you're like, oh, so everyone else likes him and thinks he's amazing, so maybe I should just go out again. Like, maybe I should just give it another try. Like, everyone else thinks they've known him for so long. He's so amazing. I guess this little thing that's bothering me isn't such a big thing, and I'll just try again.
Well, I will want to...
1 second. Yes. And that is what destroys marriages, when you have that inner voice inside of you that didn't want to continue, and you use your rationale to neglect and to counter your inner self, and then you continue dating and maybe get engaged and married, and for the rest of your life you have this aching small pit inside of you knowing this wasn't your best, but that you rationally overturned your inner truth to make it okay, but really it was never okay. So you really want to just know that your gut is a lot faster than your brain, and not to rationalize your way through staying with someone or going out for longer or again when you weren't inspired or aspired to be like this person.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that was beautifully said, and your intuition I think that a lot of regret comes from when you didn't listen to your intuition.
Yes.
I don't know how much
Yes.
regret there is when you didn't listen to your the logical part of your brain.
That's a good point.
But the regret comes when you didn't listen to the intuition. And your logic, you use your logic to push down and suppress your intuition. And I think so that true. Yeah.
No, I think you said that so beautifully. Like, I mean, that's such a good add-on. Because, like, if you don't listen to yourself, you know, intuitively, and you're like, oh, I need to leave this restaurant, or I need to leave this guy, or I need to leave the store, and you stay there, like, you feel like crap afterwards, and you, like, get so angry, like, oh, I should, the shotgun said I should stay and go out again, or, like, he said it'll be fine, or my mom said it'll be fine, and really you're, like, blaming all these other people, and you're so angry at all these other people, but really, you're angry at yourself. It hurts so bad. It hurts so bad when you have an intuition to protect yourself and you negate it with your logic, and then the pain happens. It hurts so bad. But if you logically say, I want to go to Target instead of Marshall's, and then you end up at Target and you really needed that thing that was at Marshall's, you don't beat yourself over it. Like, it doesn't hurt as much. It's just like, oh, that sucks. Wrong decision. Next time I have to go to that store. There's no pain. There is a real tangible feeling in our side of our bodies that we get when we don't protect ourselves.
And I wanted to bring up one more point that you mentioned, which is your friends, the shadchan, your mother's, friend, whatever.
He's a great guy.
And he might be a great guy, but we do have to know that within ourselves, we have not multiple personalities, but we have many facets to ourselves. For example, I have the role of a father, of a husband, of a son, of, a brother. And so I have so many different roles that I play. And for example, going to shul and whatever it may be. And I may be strong in some of those areas, but when it comes to a different area, I have more work that I need to do. And so when other people say he's such a great guy, that may be true in the roles that he's presented himself to them. However,
behind closed
doors, right? He plays a different role. And in that role, he may have an emotional blockage, a weakness, a lack, or something even potentially more scary. And so just know that when you hear he's a great guy, know that when you go into the date, you're not dating that great guy. Those things are going to come with the package if it's meant to, but on the date you're dating this person in the context of a relationship, and you have to evaluate, and you're the only one that can evaluate that role for that person. And so it also helps to separate what other people are saying from what you are experiencing, because it's just not the same guy in the same role as other people have, And if he was a great guy in the context of dating and somebody else knew that, it's like he should be married already,
Right. Like, if he's such an amazing guy, why is he not married already? And again, you're not looking for an amazing guy and you're not looking for a great guy. You're looking for your soulmate who has the same vision as you.
And the same compatibility.
And the same compatibility. And, like, he might be a great guy because you learned with him, or you worked out with business with him, or he helped with babysitting your kids one night, but you don't know how he is with intimacy. And we're not talking about sexual intimacy, well, that too. We're talking about emotional intimacy. You don't know how emotionally intimate he is, this great guy. Like, have you heard him sit down and explain his emotions and why they were coming up, and how he can manage them and what his coping mechanisms are and how he approaches intimacy and how much he can handle emotion, especially negative emotion, and how much he handles stress or runs from it, and how he knows how to handle money or lose it, and how he knows how to handle alcohol or pornography or pot or cigarettes or not, or doesn't have a healthy boundary with it. Like, he's a great guy. I've known him for so long. In what capacity? Mm-hmm. In what capacity? In what area? In what growth state? Do you know his demons? Because we've all got them. Can he talk about them? Or he's not even aware of them. If he can't even talk about his screw ups or the pain in his life, dude, you got so much, he has so much time to heal, and you don't want to be the person that does that for him, because it will never work.
And so I think that through these long form conversations, we get to a very deep place of what, for example, a date actually is. Dating, we started the conversation by talking about how dating is you protecting yourself, you
committing to
yourself. And we got to the place, and it's such a deep place of, a date is your opportunity to evaluate your potential with this person.
Yeah.
In the context of a context that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And so in this date, it's a very sacred, it's a very sacred opportunity. Yeah. And there's so much intention that should be brought to this opportunity. And what you said, which is, every guy except for one is going to be a no.
Yeah, man.
And so the point of a date is to sift out what it means for something not to be the status quo, which is a no. Like, essentially, proving that this person is a yes, as opposed to, he's probably a yes because I'm so excited, and okay, I can look past the no's.
Right.
But the default should be no, because statistically it is default a no.
Right. Like, you should be not excited to go out with him.
And so it's a very sacred place where we've gotten to in terms of what a date actually is. It's an intentional way to sift out is this person a yes?
It's a sacred space that you come into with attention and primary commitment to yourself and your vision, not to be wanted, but to observe objectively. You just listen. What does he talk about? What does he not talk about? Does he talk about his feelings or only politics and religion? Does he judge people for being different or less religious or more religious? Or does he speak about people in a way that he's just accepting and loving of variations of different people? Does he look at other women on the date that are attractive, or does he keep his eyes on you? Is he focused on getting to know you and asking you questions that are relevant to your life, or does he just talk nonstop? I've had so many clients be like, yeah, I went on a date and he just talked a lot. Well, that's not a good way for a man to really show up into a date if he's really going to get to know her. It should be 60-40, even 70-30, that the woman talks more than the man. At least 60-40 where the woman is talking more than the man. But it should be balanced. Like, he talks, I talk. He talks, I talk. Not one person running their mouth of all of their great things and all their things and all the things. Did you know? Did you know? Did you hear? Isn't this an amazing thing? And the guy... And then you're like, well, I got to know them, but they didn't really ask me about, like, my vision. You don't go on a second date. You don't say, but he was nervous. You just not try to change the reality, but accept it for as it is, and that will continue. If you try to give hope and change for the future, like maybe it was a first date thing versus a second date thing, maybe when he's more calm, he'll, like, ask me more questions. No, you're not trying to change reality and be delusional into hope of the future. You hold on to personal elevation. That's my acronym for hope. holding on to personal elevation. HOPE, hope, is the personal. You hold on to yourself, not hoping things are going to be different. If he talks a lot on the first date and doesn't care to get to know you now, I promise you that will be, and I promise you based on so much science, that will be the dynamic for the rest of your lives.
So just going back to also separating the date into two categories. I think the first one is the superficial, like as you said, the nerves, which can be real, and also the expectation and the emotions going into the date. And that's one thing. And then the more most important thing is once you get past that, the sifting out, the teasing out of, dynamics and stuff like that. So can you give, because for a lot of people who go on dates, it is real sometimes, the nerves. And so can you speak to that, kind of like the superficial layer before you can get to the core of what the date should be? Can you just give some tips?
Yeah, great question, Lovey. So, how someone is when they're nervous is not so far from how they are when they're not nervous. So it's really not that big of a jump. So stop giving it that much power and making it that big of an excuse. Okay. First and foremost, when someone's nervous, it's essentially like they're a little bit stressed. You know what's going to happen a lot when you date and when you get married? A lot of it is stress. A lot of it is stress. So if you're giving this excuse, like it's, oh, not a big deal because he was nervous on the first date, you're really just excusing the way that he manifests and behaves in a state of stress, which is not a good thing to do, because that's really what's going to be. If he's doing something that you don't like when he's stressed or nervous on the first date, that's going to be his behavior for the next, year or 5 years, until maybe he matures and learns a different coping mechanism, which you can't promise when he's going to mature and grow. But that you don't give excuses for things that are just manifesting and how they behave. You're just there to observe it. You're not there to give it an excuse or justification. So if he's too nervous or too shy, then you don't want to marry that, because if the behavior was so bad that you're blaming it that he was too nervous or too shy or too young, you don't want to marry that, because if it's so bad that you have to give it that justification, then he's probably really not ready to get married and take on a wife and children and money and bills and intimacy and working and balancing all that. Like, if he can't even handle a first date where there's no stress, like no large stresses, and he acts in ways that like talk too much or doesn't leave space for you or neglects you a little bit or isn't paying too much attention to you, or doesn't want to pay for you, or whatever the behavior was that you didn't like, but you're saying he was just young or nervous or it was the first date or whatever, like, you need to understand that you're not looking for a nice guy and someone to nurture and mother and pray that they get better. You're just looking to be honest and objective with yourself. Is this person, not a nice guy, relevant? Is this person ready to get married now? And does this person want to marry me? Those are just the two fundamental questions that you need to ask. Is he really able and ready and mature enough to handle marriage without falling apart and going to drugs and alcohol and addiction, which is super prevalent even in the religious worlds? Or is, he fully ready and able to handle stresses, including the stress of a first date, with grace and with, manageability? So you're not looking to give excuses and be nice. You're just looking to be objective and make a decision. Is this person the character that I want to marry as my husband and to lead my children and my life? Or is he not ready and not that person? And then does he want me? Has he shown me commitment, interest, and security?
So I think every time we talk, as I said earlier, there's so much gold there. And I think something that I picked up on is you said that, so like if you're observing, let's say, and you're observing his how he manages stress and nerves and stuff like that, there's a big thing about having your red flags, which is kind of like the criteria by which you judge, is this person, whatever. And so there's some stigma with red flags. Oh, you shouldn't be too picky, all of this stuff.
Be
right?
picky.
And so, but something that you mentioned, which is very powerful, is that it's not necessarily about your red flags. It's about, is he ready to manage all of this stress and manage all of the different, when you get, engaged, and there's a lot of stress, and it's not just in one area, it's in 5, 10 different areas. And then when you get married and you have children, it's in 20 different areas. So maybe he's not ready. Maybe he is a great guy, and he, and but he's not ready to, or has the emotional capacity to take on all of these different loads and burdens, which,
Yeah.
as a husband, you need to manage everything
Without falling apart.
And
going to bad
to
behavior.
improper coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Like
Drinking
substance
a beer.
abuse, alcohol, pornography, I guess, and
cigarette smoking, vaping, overworking, gambling, shopping. I mean, addiction is real, and you don't want your husband to get to a place where he checks out because he's too stressed, or he develops a physical ailment that can't even be there for you physically because he's so sick now because he didn't manage his stress. And every doctor will always tell you that stress is the number one contributor and exacerbator of all illnesses, which essentially, if you study healing, is negative emotions unprocessed that live in your body and create decay. So if your husband's not managing his stress properly, you're going to have a lot bigger issues down the road. And so you don't care if he's a great guy, because what does that mean? He sat at a Shabbos table and made good conversation and then helped you clean up the dishes. He, played with your kids nicely on the carpet after the meal. He bought you flowers before you had him over for Shabbat. He studies Gemara really well with your son. I mean, these things are all nice and irrelevant to the capacity of stress that he can manage before he falls apart. And if he has coping mechanisms to put in place already at this stage and age, Adam was only 23 when I married him, so that he knows what to do when things get hard versus not knowing what to do and falling apart, and you are the brunt of his lack of capacity and skill simply because he wasn't ready to get married. Whether he was, 20 or 30 or 40, it's irrelevant. If you don't learn how to be healthy and develop coping mechanisms, it doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, or 40, you still don't know how to apply them. So, and don't give the excuse he was too young. I married Adam at 23 years old, and I have worked with people who are in their 40s who also don't know how to manage their stress and negative behavior, which creates conflict and neglect to the wife and the family. So don't give an excuse of age here. This is just when people are ready and know how to manage themselves, that's when you take on another person to manage. Otherwise, your breakdown is a ripple effect in a negative way for the people around you.
So bringing this all back, right? The question that spurred this is, what is the exit plan if you're not happy on a date? Just leave.
Just leave.
With all of the depth and profundity in which a date is so important.
Yeah.
Just leave. That is the easiest option, even though in the moment
you'll think you're like a bad person or inconsiderate, or I'm not treating the shotgun nice, or he already traveled an hour and a half for me, I can't just leave after an hour, or he flew here from Australia to meet me. Okay, guys, if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. So if you waste an hour of his time, or if you waste 3 hours of your time and you knew it wasn't going to work out after the 5 seconds, you're actually being a lot nicer, only wasting an hour of his time versus 3 hours of his time if you already knew it wasn't going to work out. So don't give the excuse he flew from Australia, I can't leave after an hour. How rude that would be. No, it would be rude for you to waste 3 hours of his night giving him this hope and delusion that maybe it would work out when you knew you were going to say no after 5 minutes. So don't delude yourself into the hypothetical concept of what society says you need to do. Be honest and clear with your own self, and you'll see how that truly is the kinder way to live.
Yeah, and you said 3 hours. If you keep deluding yourself, you'll get to a place where you don't feel like you can say no. You get engaged. He asks you to marry him, or he asks you to marry him. You say yes. Now what?
Yeah.
If you couldn't leave him after the first date, You're not going to leave him while engaged and or married. So the easiest time to say no is the first date, or when you first
feel something's
feel
off.
it. Feel
Honor
something's
that.
off.
Don't care what other people tell you. And date him till you hate him is the worst advice ever. Do not listen to people who tell you date him till you hate him, because that means that you're neglecting your inner truth, your inner child, your inner knowing, your inner wisdom, the God inside of you. You do not go out and waste other people's time and energy until you get to a place of conflict. You avoid the conflict by getting to know yourself, knowing your visions, knowing your values, and honoring your truth and feelings in the beginning. You have that list and you match it up and say, is this person the person that I planned on marrying so that I can have the vision that I design, instead of living a life of chaos by default? And it's not about, what you said about, if you can't say no on the first date, what makes you think you're going to have enough courage to say, no, or walk away when you are engaged? And I got really emotional on that, because I know a lot of women who got to the point of being engaged and they just felt too far in it to even get out. They knew something was off. They didn't feel so great, and it wasn't big enough for them to leave. It wasn't like he smacked her in the face and she's like, oh my God. It wasn't big enough that she could wake up and leave, even though she felt it so strongly inside. And then there were things like, oh, but we already spent $20,000 on the wedding, and we already picked out a venue, and I already have a dress, and how can I cancel on the $200 dress? And you're thinking about everyone else but yourself. So if you can't say no on the first date when there's not so much pressure and investment, what the heck are you going to do later on when all of that pressure's on you? You have to have your strength now before you start dating, a conviction of love and commitment to yourself and to God's purpose for you and your future. It's not about what other people think about you, because behind closed doors, when you go to bed at night, you're going to bed at night with yourself and only yourself, and you have to be proud of who you are and the life that you're creating.
And so with all of that,
thank you so much. Oh.
No, just really quickly. So through our conversation, for those of you lovely people who are listening,
yes, we love you.
They're convinced that the best time to say no or to leave is on the first date. Give me 3 different just phrases that they can use to walk out.
I love myself more. The only person obligated to protect me is me. In 10 years' time, I will not know this person nor many people who worked with me on this journey, but I still will know myself. I need to create a future that's right for me, that matches my vision, and I have to trust myself with my decision making more than anyone else. I can trust myself. I love myself. I need me. I don't need him to need me. I need me. This is my life, my journey. I'm the one who writes my own love story, and I love me more. I don't need to be nice to him if I'm not nice to myself. I don't need him to want me. I need to want myself. I need to be able to have my own energy and not, give my energy away so that he or someone else could be proud of me. I need to be proud of me. So with all of that wrapped up, as I love me more. I love me more than him wanting me or not pissing off my mother or Shad Khan or my best friend who set me up. I love me more than the hypothetical pissing off someone else when I let it go. Because if they're really getting angry with you for listening to yourself, they're not the right people in your life. If they really get angry with you for leaving the date after an hour or a half hour, if something's really wrong, they're not the right person for you. They're not the right shliach from Hashem. They're not the right messenger for your highest potential of love. You have 7 potentials of love. You don't want to marry, your lowest potential and have a very struggle-filled life. The thing that people say, oh, I married the thing that I needed to work on. No, you just married someone who wasn't right for you, because your life's not meant to be challenging. You're meant to grow to a high potential and attract someone on that high potential to have as minimal challenges as possible, because life is full of pain, but you don't want to add to what the natural ups and downs are of life. You want to give yourself the best opportunity and space to have a lot of strength and joy with the challenges that are going to come in life, not challenges with a challenging life. So you love yourself more. You need you and God and no one else forever. Forever, man.
Would you like to wrap this up with a rap?
No.
Okay.
I freestyled earlier, so Adam was making notes of that. Love yourself more. You can close the door. It's not All right. No, I don't want to. Okay, guys, this has been Chaya and Adam Garcia, relationship experts and dating coaches. And we are here to help you marry your highest potential of love, because after the doors are shut and your wedding is over, there is no one who's going to live your life but you. So get to know yourself, your visions to have your beautiful life and destiny. The world needs you and the very beautiful love that you're going to create. So please DM us your questions. Comment with love below if you really want to get ready to have the best life. We will send you a free PDF on the most common mistakes that singles are making right now, so you can avoid them and have a much better probability of attracting your highest soulmate. So drop a comment below. Love, we would like to hear from you. Send us any questions we want to have, and we will see you on the next episode. Have a great day. Peace.